Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TEDXcellence, the show that constantly challenges my intellect, what little of it I have left. And I'm coming to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, wonderful Wednesday. Oh, boy. It's been a long morning / into the afternoon for me already, but I'm here to relax, I guess, decompress, maybe, have a little bit of catharsis. I don't know. You never know with these things. For all I know, today's TEDx could be the one that finally informs me of something or has very little for me to argue against. Who knows? The shadow knows, I suppose. And maybe you know. And who are you? Well, you are Jaeger Pony, hello. His Kitten, hello. Dark Alile, hello. Aloysius Fudpucker, hello. John Miller, hello. Keeverdam, hello. Asian Hippie, hello. Black Belt for Christ, hello. Thrashy, hello. Nothing for you here, hello. Gunfox61, hello. Keenan, hello. Richo8181, hello. Who's next? And then the chat jump, of course, because it would. Chicago Mike, hello. You're Ridiculous Lunatic, hello. Check Your Logic, hello. Graf Spree, hello. Rudicus Prime, hello. The One Ton Hammer, hello. Frosted Glass, hello. That One Servant of Satania, hello. Eugene Byrne, hello. Joe Fapps, hello. Earl Walton, hello. Death Glock, hello. The Gayest Person on YouTube, hello. Decode, hello. Molly Mags, 53, hello. Blake Becker, hello. Somnamnum Nation, hello. Shio Gorath, hello. Fernanda, hello. Eric Grunstadter, hello. 69 Otters, hello. Red Chaos Tree, hello. And Twisted Skipster, hello. And congratulations, Twisted, on the fundraiser from last night. I should have that link in front of me. I should have done that. I apologize. I will retweet that out soon. I should have put that had that at the ready. But either way, Functional, hello, even though you are a butt. Kyler, hello. All right, so what do we have on deck today, guys? Oh, before I get to that, the bingo card has been updated. Yes, the bingo card has been updated. Please check out the link in the description if you have not already. I have consolidated a couple of things and re-added a couple of things and revised a couple of things. So for your edification, I will go across and back and forth on the card to know what the elements we are keeping our eyes out for, or our ears out for, more likely, as we proceed. Plays victim, feminism, school to prison pipeline is back. Childhood or family anecdote, microaggressions, systemic or institutional. I added a secondary there. Takes credit for something done by others in their demographic. Attempt to coin new buzzword / buzz phrase. I finally added that. Equity, rape culture, toxic, anecdote that probably never happened, free space, leaves out vital context. Speaker should not be in current occupation or position. Marginalized / marginalization. White supremacy / privilege. Excuse me. I consolidated those two because you could almost put those two in the exact same box whenever they're brought up in these things. So I just put that there as a one-off. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. Wage gap, patriarchy, benevolent condescension, word salad, a list, cultural appropriation, and gratuitous pausing for effect. So again, be sure to get your copy of the bingo card. I will circle things if and when they occur or seem to occur in the course of the talk. After the talk is over with, I will review my bingo card and go over it with you guys if you have any suggestions, objections, etc. This is Kyle. Thank you so much. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Thank you so much, Kyle. Joe Fapps, thank you so much. Word salad is making me full. Yeah, word salad almost goes without saying in most of these, but it can vary. But what is the subject of today's talk? Well, the full title of today's talk is Community-Powered Criminal Justice Reform. Community-Powered Criminal Justice Reform. Now, if I remember correctly, this talk took place several months ago, I believe, or at least published several months ago. So it occurred before the current, let's say, crisis and scandals and such. So it is on a topic that is suddenly relevant now. And like so many before it, I am curious to know what the proposal is for community-based criminal justice reform. I am anticipating some restorative justice concepts, but you never know. So we will find out together. And a few more hellos. Mike Savage, Blarg. Faithless, hello. Atheist Icon, hello. Roger Reynolds, hello. Zalbla, hello. And I think that... Hearst Gravegear, hello. I think that's everybody so far. Mark W. Goron, hello. All right, guys. So per usual, I will start off with a few seconds to do a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it. And if so, we shall proceed.
This is my favorite protest shirt.
Okay, that is his favorite protest shirt. You guys hear all that? Let me know. Broken Baller, hello. Tall Person, hello. It's your day off. Yay! Sounds good, says Asian Hippie. Sounds fine, says some emulation. Hi, Tall Person. Hi, Quinn. The Cultist, hello. All right, guys. This is his favorite protest shirt. What does it say? Ferguson, New York, protect your people. Oakland, San Jose. All right. There you go. And here we go.
It says protect your people.
Yes.
We made it in the basement of our community center.
Okay. March of 2018. Oh, wow. Okay. So this is slightly dated. Actually, I kind of appreciate that a little bit because I would rather hear theories and proposals that come at least from a time that isn't as immediately emotionally charged as right now. Now, I don't know what was happening in March of 2018 off the top of my head that might apply to this, but again, you know, these theories tend to stay relatively static depending on who's talking about them. So, all right. So March of 2018, protect your people. This is a shirt he created in the basement of his community center. Got it.
I've worn it at rallies, at protests, at marches, at candlelight vigils with families who have lost loved ones to police violence.
And I'm hoping you washed it each time. I know, it's petty. Okay, so yeah, police violence, again, poignant to the times right now.
I've seen how this ethic of community organizing has been able to change arresting practices, hold individual officers accountable, and allow families to feel strong and supported in the darkest moments of their lives.
All right, all interesting abstracts. Hopefully we'll get some specifics. Thank you, Tall Person. Happy World UFO Day, everybody. You know, in a way, the world itself is a UFO. Because do we really know everything about it? It's a little unidentified. And, technically, it's flying through space. So we're all on a spaceship, everyone. Except for me, because I'm on the moon. I'm a satellite. Or, well, I'm on a satellite.
But when a family would come to our center and say, my loved one got arrested, what can we do? We didn't know how to translate the power of community organizing that we saw on the streets into the courts.
Okay, so you again, I mean, the title of the stream or the presentation, community-based criminal justice reform. All right, so how do you extend community on the streets activism and passion into the criminal justice system? Thank you, Joe Fapps. Has anyone seen the rubber bullet injuries from recent protests? Some are like gunshot wounds. I don't. Well, I've seen a couple. From a few weeks ago. And I've seen injuries from rubber bullets before. I mean, rubber bullets are no joke. They might not be designed to penetrate entirely through into bodies, but they don't feel no good. And they do a lot of damage. They can. I mean, someone can be killed with a rubber bullet. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm much of a fan of rubber bullets as crowd control, honestly. But that's a conversation for another day. Unless, of course, our speaker brings it up.
We figured we're not lawyers, and so that's not our arena to make change. And so despite our belief in collective action, we would allow people that we cared about to go to court alone.
Okay. Thank you, Earl Walton. Scribe, if you have 3 hours to spare, Rogan's latest podcast with Colin Noir is really good and actually presents some good proposals on this topic. Okay. 3 hours to spare. Well, I mean, I could listen to it in pieces, conceivably. But thank you, Earl.
9 out of 10 times, and this is true nationally, they couldn't afford their own attorney. And
yeah. And so they got a public defender. Oh, is that where we're going?
so they'd have a public defender
Yeah.
who was doing heroic work,
Sure.
but was often under-resourced and stretched bare with too many cases.
That is true.
They would face prosecutors aiming for high conviction rates, mandatory minimum sentences, and racial bias baked into every stage of the process.
Okay, now that last one, you're going to have to give me some more evidence, because everything you've said prior to that, I've seen things like that before. I've heard that directly from people, both prosecutors and defense attorneys, public defenders or otherwise. That last one, you're saying everybody's racist. All right.
And so, facing those odds, stripped away from the power of community, unsure how to navigate the courts, over 90% of people that face a criminal charge in this country will take a plea deal.
Yeah, and the courts are very happy to offer plea deals a lot of the time, even in cases that seem like, why would you give this person a break? Because our system is so overwhelmed oftentimes. And the system obviously breaks down into individual local courts more often than not. It's not one cohesive system. And the rules for courts, procedures, laws, and so on, they vary state to state and even jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So talking about it in one holistic kind of thing doesn't necessarily apply, but that's just me sort of pontificating for a minute. Thank you, Kingslayer Damocles. How to change criminal justice. Make it a felony to withhold exculpatory evidence with a penalty of a minimum of the maximum of the case they charged. I'd have to think about that one. I don't know. I'll think about that one. And thank you, Earl Walton. How to navigate courts 101. Stay away from them. Well, that is the first thing. I mean, and if he's talking about civil cases and things like that, that doesn't really deal with prosecutors so much. So I guess we are talking about, now he said criminal justice reform. Okay. So yeah, the first way to avoid it is not to commit crimes. But then he's also implying that there is an element to this that is sweeping people up just because of what they look like. So maybe we'll get to that.
Meaning they'll never have their fabled day in court that we talk about in television shows and in movies.
Well, it's a gamble. I mean, every case is different. The circumstances vary, from litigation to litigation or prosecution to prosecution. Oftentimes, you're taking a plea rather than risk more jail time in the court. Now, of course, if you choose not to take a plea, which is totally your right to do, you are betting that your case supersedes that of the prosecution as far as like reasonable doubt or whatever else. You don't have to take a plea. You can have your day in court. Yeah.
And this is the untold part of the story
Okay.
of mass incarceration in America.
Mass incarceration. Now, people are just being swept up willy-nilly, no due process, but you're also talking about plea deals. Like, okay.
How we became the largest jailer in the world.
Because we enforce our laws and a lot of people commit crimes in this country. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of things that could probably be decriminalized at this point, in my estimation, like simple marijuana possession and some other things. I mean, individual arguments have their merits and their flaws. I'm willing to listen to them. But the mass incarceration catchphrase, which is not a new buzz phrase, I'm not circling that. It sounds more and more like a conspiracy theory every time I hear it bring up. Every time I hear it bring up. Every time I hear it brought up. Is the pepper jack hitting me that hard already? Holy cats. So yeah, I don't buy just sort of shorthanding a bunch of theories and accusations with the phrase mass incarceration. It doesn't make any sense.
Over 2 million people currently incarcerated in this country, and projections that say 1 out of 3 Black men will see the inside of a prison cell at some point in their life on this trajectory.
Uh-huh.
but we have a solution.
Okay. All right. Well, you've more or less articulated the problem. You want to solve racist mass incarceration, I guess, because you've brought up race a couple times now. What is the solution? I'm dying to know.
We decided to be irreverent to this idea that only lawyers can impact the courts.
It's not irreverent. There are a lot of places where you vote in your judges. There's a lot of places where you vote in your state or district or whatever prosecutor. People have the power to affect the courts if they care to pay attention to what the judges and the prosecutors and so on are saying about what they intend to do or follow their records. But no, and there are ways to affect them from the outside as well. I don't know how irreverent that is. I don't think it's that novel. I mean, lobbying groups have been working to change the courts and push forward laws forever. You know, petition campaigns and so on. But okay, what's the solution with being irreverent?
And to penetrate the judicial system with the power, intellect, and ingenuity of community organizing.
Okay, this is not a new idea, but what are you proposing? Because so far you haven't said anything that hasn't been done a zillion times before.
We call the approach participatory defense.
Okay, new buzzword, buzz phrase, never heard that one before. Participatory defense circled, and as well I will circle the free space on the board. We haven't reached the end of the presentation yet, so make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I'm not circling yet, but I'm thinking about it. Hasn't mentioned school to prison pipeline. I don't think he's said it's systemic or institutional yet, so we'll proceed.
It's a methodology for families and communities who whose loved ones are facing charges and how they can impact the outcome of those cases and transform the landscape of power in the courts.
Okay, so their loved ones are already facing charges. Okay, now obviously being charged with something does not mean you are guilty of something, but okay, how can you affect that? Well, aside from serving as character witnesses or trying to help the authorities gather information that might tend to show that your loved one is either innocent of the crime or there's some mitigating factors to it. I'm not quite sure if they're already charged at that point. I'm curious to know what the suggestions are. Thank you, Drew W. Plenty of penetration in the judicial system. Now, Drew, this is a family show. Dogcat Fox's ears are burning. Thank you very much.
How it works is families whose loved ones are facing criminal charges will come to a weekly meeting.
Okay.
And it's half support group, half strategic planning session.
Okay.
And they'll build a community out of what otherwise would be an isolating and lonely experience.
A support group and a strategy session. Okay. Well, the support group part, don't get me wrong, that can be healthy and beneficial. But what's the strategy? Okay, loved one is charged with crime, whatever. Family needs help to affect that. What is the process? What's the proposal?
And they'll sit in a circle.
A circle? We've heard about circles before from our, I think, at least one of the more recent restorative justice speeches, talking a lot about circles.
And write the names of their loved ones on a board.
Okay.
Who they're there to support.
Right.
And collectively, the group will find out ways to tangibly and tactily impact the outcome of that case.
Okay. Sounds interesting. What do you mean by tangibly and tactily, or you mean tactfully? I'm not quite sure. What is done to impact the case when a loved one is charged?
They'll review police reports to find out inconsistencies.
Okay.
They'll find areas that requires more investigation by the defense attorney.
Okay.
And they'll go to court with each other for the emotional support, but also so that the judge knows that the person standing before them is part of a larger community that is invested in their well-being and success.
Okay. I have absolutely no problem with any of that at all. I mean, if you're dealing with a public defender, certainly, they're overworked and underpaid and so on, most times. If you, as a concerned family member or just a plain citizen, go over the information, and if you find anything that might be, worthy of use by a defense attorney or should be brought to the attention of the authorities, sure, no problem there. Okay.
And the results have been remarkable.
Okay.
We've seen charges get dismissed.
Okay.
Sentences significantly reduced.
All right.
Acquittals won at trial.
Okay.
And sometimes it has been literally life-saving.
Do you have any statistics or examples or totals that you could give us from what your organization has done? I mean, I'm willing to believe it. I just like a little backup is all.
Like in the case of Ramon Vasquez.
Okay.
Father of 2.
Okay.
Family man.
Yeah.
Truck driver.
Okay.
And someone who was wrongfully charged with a gang-related murder he was totally innocent of,
okay,
but was facing a life sentence.
That sounds terrible. How did your community group outreach, whatever, affect that?
Ramon's family came to those meetings shortly after his arrest and his detention.
Okay.
And they worked the model. And through their hard work, they found major contradictions in the case.
Okay.
Gaping holes in the investigation.
All right.
And was able to disprove dangerous assumptions by the detectives.
Okay.
Like that the red hat that they found when they raided his home somehow affiliated him to a gang lifestyle. Through their photos and the records, they're able to prove that the red hat was from his son's Little League team.
All right. I mean, all of that sounds perfectly fine. Glad to hear it. I'm no fan of innocent people being charged and or going to jail, of course. Was all of this information not available to the public defender? I'm just curious, or I mean, assuming there was a public defender. I mean, that seems to be what it is. So this was all generated from the family?
That Ramon coached on the weekends.
Okay.
And they produced independent information that proved that Ramon was on the other side of town at the time of the alleged incident.
You mean they gave witness testimony? Okay. Was this not previously solicited either by the police or the defense attorney? I'm not trying to be like ridiculously skeptical, but a lot of this sounds like the normal kind of things that would come about from investigatory practices by either defense or private investigators or et cetera. So, I mean, I'm willing to accept the possibility that the cops did not do their jobs or the prosecutors did not do their jobs and so forth. But was all of this just spontaneously generated without any other solicitation by the family and friends?
Through their phone records and receipts from the stores that they attended.
And none of this information was sought out by either the prosecutor or the defense of their own accord? Again, I'm willing to believe it, but I need more context. I'm about to circle a square in here.
After 7 long months of hard work from the family, Ramon staying strong inside jail, they were able to get the charge dismissed.
They were. There was no work intervention by either the police, the prosecutor, the defense attorney. It's all the family that did this. Again, I'm willing to believe it if he's willing to say it and I can actually look it up. I mean, he gave the name of the person. I don't know the details, but the fact that no one else was doing any kind of work that might have either solicited this information or gathered this information elsewise. It's all on the family. Is that what he's saying? There's no there's no square to circle on this one. I just don't know. I mean, well, it might be leaves out vital context, but it sounds a little bit too good to be true, if you know what I mean. Not that I'm not glad the guy got off of charges he was innocent of, but...
And they brought Ramon home to live the life that he should have been living all along.
Sure.
And with each new case, the families identify...
Look at those attentive faces, solemn faces. That one girl behind the guy in the blue shirt looks like she's asleep. I don't know if I'd blame her. I'm going to watch her for a second here, see if she opens her eyes.
Find new ways
she's
to
awake.
flex the knowledge of the community to have impact on the court system.
You didn't have impact on the court system per se. I mean, if you offered exculpatory evidence that showed that he was either innocent of the crime or not there at the time and everything else, that's how the system's supposed to work. Now, my question would be, was this evidence that the family and friends presented, were those things that neither the defense attorney, the police, and or the prosecutor sought out in the course of their own investigations? Was it a lax attentiveness and responsibility by the criminal justice system that made it so that that information was not available to them? That's the question I have, because otherwise they provided witness testimony and evidence that showed he was not able to have committed the crime. Great. The system worked. He was falsely charged. It happens. Unfortunately, our system's not perfect, but I have a very hard time believing, unless you're going to say otherwise, that it's all on the family that did this. No effort was taken by anybody else on the case.
We would go to a lot of sentencing hearings. And when we would leave the sentencing hearing and on the walk back to the parking lot after someone's loved one just got sent to prison,
Yeah.
the most common refrain we would hear wasn't so much, "I hate that judge,"
Yeah.
or "I wish we had a new lawyer."
It was, "I wish my loved one hadn't committed that crime." Maybe?
What they would say was, "I wish they knew him like we know him."
That can't be fixed. It's an interesting paradox at times. You can have, for all intents and purposes, good people who commit crimes. All right. I wish they knew them like we know them. That doesn't matter, in fact. The matter is the crime committed and the impartiality of the process. Now, is the process perfect? By no means. But that's exactly why we don't let people who are emotionally involved in the process, most of the time at least, get involved in doling out justice. That's why we have a jury of peers, not a jury of friends. We have a judge who is impartial. We have a prosecutor who is hopefully impartial, and so on. Their complaint, they don't know him like we know him, is exactly the point of our process, to have that insulation between assumption and fact, between benefit of the doubt and reasonable doubt. That's why we have that there.
And so we develop tools and vehicles for families to tell the fuller story of the loved one, so they would be understood as more than just a case file.
Okay. Character witnesses. These are the phrases that comes to mind. Character witnesses. Okay.
They started making what we call social biography packets, which is families making a compilation of photos and certificates and letters that show past challenges and hardships and accomplishments and future prospects and opportunities.
Okay, again, character witnesses and information thereof. I mean, you see that all the time. People making pleas for leniency from the court, trying to show that this person isn't all bad, and so on and so on. I'm not against it in any way, shape, or form, but that's not innovative. That's not new. That's done all the time. Okay. Thank you, John Miller. So he wants a judge that relates to the defendant. I guess I am naive that believes I guess I am naive that believes that justice needs to be blind so that the rulings are just. Well, I mean, it is unavoidable, depending on the case, that, the people involved don't get, to some extent, emotionally involved. If a judge has to sit there and listen to horrific crimes undertaken by someone, they work within the law as written, but with their own discretion. And their own discretion comes down to their own interpretation of the severity of the crime, the circumstances surrounding it, and so on. Is it impossible to leave emotion out of that process? I think so, yes, when you come down to brass tacks. But everything and all the checks and balances and all the procedure and all the restraints of the law leading up to that point are supposed to, and again, it's not a perfect process, never will be, supposed to weed out as much emotion from the process up to that point. And even then, the judges can only work within the bounds of the law. But again, nothing I'm hearing from our speaker sounds all that incredible, or sounds like things that aren't already being done and have not already been done consistently for a very long time. So I'm not against any of it. I just don't see how it's anything new.
And the social biography videos were working so well in the courts that we evolved it into social biography videos, 10-minute mini documentaries, which were interviews of people in their homes and at their churches and at their workplace, explaining who the person was in the backdrop of their lives.
Again, character witnesses, mitigating circumstances, perhaps in sentencing guidelines and so on. Trying to appeal to the judge's sense of the person's place in the community and etc. No problem with that at all. But this is nothing new. Whether you're putting it in video form or you're having people come up and submit testimonials or letters. So, okay.
And it was a way for us to dissolve the walls of the court temporarily. And through the power of video, bring the judge out of the court and into the community.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe videos are some, more modern gimmick of it, but the ultimate mechanism of it is nothing new. Okay.
So that they would be able to understand the fuller context of someone's life that they're deciding the fate of.
All right.
One of the first social biography projects that came out of our camp was by Carnell. He had come to the meetings because he had pled to a low-level drug charge.
He had pled to a low-level drug charge. Okay, so rather than go to court, he pled out to a low-level drug charge. Okay, just want to make sure I understand as we proceed.
And after years of sobriety, got arrested for this one drug possession charge.
That is irrelevant. So after years of sobriety, he fell off the wagon basically and was caught. Okay, I know I'm sounding a little blunt in my descriptions here, but I just want to make sure I know where we're coming from on this.
But he was facing a 5-year prison sentence because of the sentencing schemes in California.
Okay, on a plea, he was facing 5 years. I can't even imagine what he would have gotten if he'd gone to court and been found guilty. But okay, on a plea, he's facing 5 years.
We knew him primarily as a dad. He'd bring his daughters to the meetings and then play with them at the park across the street.
And he put his safety and their welfare at risk for drugs. Okay. I mean, again, I don't know what drug he's talking about. If he's talking about like minor possession of marijuana or something, I wouldn't argue with that being, in relative terms, a misdemeanor or something at this point. In this day and age, but I don't know what he's talking about. And honestly, at this point, I'm not quite sure I can trust how our speaker categorizes facts. So, yeah.
And he said, look, I could do the time, but if I go in, they're going to take my girls.
Well, if you're a single father and they've got nowhere to go, then yeah. And that's unfortunately the risk you take when you have a family and you commit crimes. So thank you, Red Castry. BTK also was a father that the community liked. Well, that is one of the most extreme examples. But yeah, the fact that someone's a family man or a mother or a father or whatever, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't inherently mitigate something. Okay. Now, I mean, if it's the situation where I stole bread from the store because my family was starving, okay, and the evidence points to that was the motivation for the crime. Any humane person would probably give something like leniency to a situation like that, certainly. But elsewise, simply being a father or a mother or responsible for someone else and committing a crime, I'm not sure that mitigates so much as, again, depending on the circumstances, might further indict you of your recklessness and lack of care. So, yeah, that one doesn't really wash with me all by itself. I'd need more information.
And so we gave him a camera and said, just take pictures of what it's like being a father.
Uh-huh.
And so he took pictures of making breakfast for his daughters and taking them to school, taking them to after school programs and doing homework. And it became this photo essay.
Okay.
That he turned into his lawyer, who used at the sentencing hearing.
Okay, so again, mitigating circumstances, ties to the community, character witness type evidence. Okay. Again, nothing new. Maybe the medium involved is novel-ish, video and photographs. Maybe. Okay.
And that judge, who originally indicated a 5-year prison sentence, understood Carnell in a whole new way.
Okay.
And he converted that 5-year prison sentence into a 6-month outpatient program.
Okay, so the judge used his or her prerogative within the bounds of the sentencing guidelines to alleviate the sentence put upon the convicted on the basis of mitigating circumstances and character witness type evidence. That's the system working. And all credit to those that go to the effort to do such things and reach judges and so on to give people a break if there are circumstances and elements that might deserve it. But again, that's not new. That's not something novel. That you're not changing the criminal justice system. You are working the system. And I don't mean to make it sound like that's some kind of malicious or some kind of like sneaky thing. The system is there to be worked by both sides to try to reach something like justice. It's not always perfect, but that's the best we got. So them working the system, okay. And thank you, Hazmat Sad Boy. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Well, there's that, but also, again, if they're using the leeway within the system and within the judge's discretion to try to find a more lenient sentence, depending on the circumstances, and if the judge decides to do so, more power to you, And if the judge is swayed in such a way that goes beyond the bounds of reasonableness on appeal from the prosecutor to a higher court, well, then they have to, deal with that. Maybe they overrule the lower court judge. But that's the system working as well. This is one of the TEDx talks for so far. He's not saying anything that is all that controversial to me. I'm just not quite sure how it's all that, I don't know, not relevant, but novel, innovative. It's not a new idea.
so that Carnell could be with his daughters. His girls would have a father in their life, and Carnell could get the treatment that he was actually seeking.
The treatment he was seeking, was he seeking that before he had the drugs on him? I mean, don't get me wrong. I hope he cleaned up. I hope he stayed with his family and so on. But it's really on him, isn't it? The whole situation is his fault to begin with. So, yeah.
We have one ceremony of sorts that we use in participatory defense.
Ceremony of sorts. Okay, I'm going to check real quick. Plays victim, not himself. He's speaking for others so far. Feminism, no. School to prison pipeline, no. Childhood or family anecdote, no. He's not talking about himself. Microaggressions, no. Systemic institutional. I mean, he's talked about the criminal justice system. He's talked about mass incarceration. It's a bit of an extrapolation, but I'm going to circle systemic institutional. Takes credit for something done by others? No. Equity? No. Rape culture? No. Toxic? No. Anecdote that probably never happened. I mean, I'm willing to extend that the scenarios and cases he's talking about actually occurred. I'm not quite sure they occurred in the way that he's saying they occurred, so that's why I'm going to circle leaves out vital context, because in that first anecdote, I have a hard time believing, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I have a hard time believing that it was only due to the efforts of the family and the friends that exculpatory information was found in that case. I'm willing to accept the possibility that the cops were lazy, that the prosecutors were lazy, and maybe even the public defender, if it was a public defender, was lazy and did no work for their client whatsoever, and it was only on the families. But he didn't say that, so I have a hard time believing it for sure. Speaker should not be in the current occupation or position. He hasn't stated what his occupation or position is, and honestly, what he's talking about fundamentally and what he's suggesting be done isn't anything that isn't going right along with his intentions, so I don't have a problem with that. Marginalization, marginalized, no. White supremacy, privilege, no. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. He brought up the inherent racial biases in the system, but he hasn't said anything more about it, so I'm going to let the rest of the talk play out before I circle that one. Wage gap, no. Patriarchy, no. Benevolent condescension, no. Word salad, not yet. He might have gotten close in some of his explanations of what his process is, but not yet. A list, not yet. Cultural appropriation, no. Gratuitous pausing for effect. I haven't noticed any. John Miller, thank you. Sounds like a typical community organizer. While a lot of talk, not a lot of substance. Well, I mean, like I say, nothing he's suggesting or the examples he's giving are ridiculous or controversial or anything. I mean, they're working within the system. They're working the system, and that's entirely their right to do. It's not just a one-sided process, or it shouldn't be. So I have no problem with anything he's said so far or suggested. That's great, I guess, but again, it's nothing innovative. It's not changing the system. It's not reforming the system. It's working within the system.
And I told you earlier that when families come to the meetings, they write the names of their loved ones on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And those are names that we all get to know week in, week out through the stories of the family.
Okay.
And we're rooting for and praying for and hoping for.
Okay.
And when we win a case, when we get a sentence reduced or a charge dropped, or we win an acquittal, that person who's been a name on the board comes to the meeting.
Uh-huh. Okay. And you have a party, which, I mean, you know, given the circumstances, all right. If their sentence is reduced to 3 years instead of 5, are they still coming to the party? Just curious.
And when their name comes up, they're given an eraser, and they walk over to the board, and they erase their name.
Wow. Sorry, that's, yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you, Tarkata. Distribution equals 5 years minimum. Minor drug charge equals nonviolent. Weasel words to play down crime. Possibly. I mean, again, I circled leaves out vital context. The guy doesn't give us any more details than he's willing to give. and he paints everything in the brightest light possible. So when he talks about bias in the system, I'm wondering if he's acknowledging or willing to acknowledge his own bias in his storytelling. Now, like I say, I don't have any reason to disbelieve that he got an innocent guy, or that the family and his group or his efforts helped to get an innocent guy off of a major charge. I can believe that. That happens all the time. Unfortunately, people are arrested for crimes they didn't commit. I don't have any reason to believe that they didn't help to reduce the sentence recommendation from some number of years, 5 or otherwise, down to effectively 6 months of drug rehab. I don't have any reason or any particular desire to disbelieve any of that. But at the same time, I'm not letting him off the hook from just sort of sugarcoating everything, because that's not how reality works. Or effectively manufacturing apologia for people who commit crimes. He's a father. Yeah, all the more reason why he shouldn't be committing crimes. Not being a father should immediately mitigate his responsibility. I mean, at least he was held responsible. I assume if he does not pass or does not complete his rehabilitation program, he's going to be back on the block for a sentence. So hopefully that was the case and he's held accountable and there are consequences for his actions. But all the same, the initiating incident is still on his head for being a father of children. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Lady Gopher, for the dog cat fox, who is falling asleep or just bowing out of respect. I'm not quite sure. I'll take either one because God knows dog cat fox needs a nap from now. Dog cat fox needs a nap now and again. Pepper Jack's hitting me, guys. We only got like 3-4 minutes left.
And it sounds simple, but it is a spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And people are applauding and they're crying. And for the families that are just starting that journey and they're sitting in the back of the room, for them to know that there's a finish line, that one day they too might be able to bring their loved one home, that they could erase the name, is profoundly inspiring.
Bring their loved one home. I mean, again, if we're talking about people charged and or convicted of crimes they did not commit, I get you. If they've been convicted of crimes they did commit, they bring them home after they've served their time, whatever it might be. And certainly, if family and friend efforts mitigate some of the severity of the sentencing or whatever else at the judge's discretion, again, more power to you. That's great. I don't have a problem with the system working as it's designed, even if sometimes the system working as it's designed ends up victimizing innocent people or over punishing people for crimes. And unfortunately, that's just a reality. And, I can only hope it happens less and less over time. But okay, again, you're working the system. Congratulations.
We're training organizations all over the country now in participatory defense. And we have a national network of over 20 cities.
Okay.
And it's a church in Pennsylvania. It's a parents association in Tennessee. It's a youth center in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And the latest city that we just added to the national network to grow and deepen this practice is Philadelphia.
Okay.
They literally just started their first weekly participatory defense meeting last week.
Okay. Again, great. You're working the system. Hopefully for a better outcome of justice. I have no argument.
And the person that we brought from California to Philadelphia to share their testimony, to inspire them to know what's possible, was Ramon Vasquez.
Okay, so the guy that was wrongfully charged. Okay.
Who went from sitting in a jail in Santa Clara County, California, to inspiring a community about what's possible through the perseverance of community.
Again, getting people involved in the criminal justice system. Go ahead. Great. It's nothing that was barred from being undertaken previously. If you're organizing to do so, okay, fine.
across the country.
Yeah, all right.
And with all the hubs, we still use one metric that we invented. It's called time saved. It's a saying that we actually still say at weekly meetings. And what we say when a family comes to the meeting for the first time is, if you do nothing, the system is designed to give your loved one time served.
Time served is effectively if you spend time in jail waiting for the trial, let's say, and the judge says time served, they count the time you were in custody waiting for the proceedings to begin and go on, etc. They count that towards your sentence in a positive light. That's what time served means. But, oh, okay.
That's the language the system uses to quantify time of incarceration.
Yes. In a certain context, okay.
But if you engage, if you participate, you could turn time served into time saved. That's them home with you, living the life they should be living.
Should. What choices of theirs put them in that situation in the first place? I mean, not everyone sent to jail is inherently a victim of the system. A lot of people actually commit crimes, to put themselves under threat of arrest and incarceration. They're not all innocent victims.
So Carnell, for example, would represent 5 years of time saved.
Okay, so the 6 months of rehabilitation don't count. And I assume, I could be wrong, I assume if he did not complete those 6 months of drug rehabilitation, that he would be up for potentially having those 5 years dropped on him. But okay, I mean, maybe he completed his time and he's done nothing bad since. Okay, so you're talking about time spent in prison. All right, 5 years were saved. Okay.
So when we totaled our time saved numbers from all the different participatory defense hubs through their work in the meetings and at court and making social biography videos and packets,
it's going to be a very large number. I bet you. If they take every day, every week, every year shaved off of however many cases they've gone through, especially if you take a guy who was up for serious felony, if not, what was the first guy's example? Like murder charges or something? I mean, if you take life in prison or the potential sentence from that and you count that towards the total, yeah, you could have just a small number of cases wrongly prosecuted or overly prosecuted add up to a lot of years. So I'm guessing it's going to be a big number. But then you have to take into account how many people and sentencing guidelines that actually accounts for. I doubt he'll spell that out, but anyway.
We had 4,218 years of time saved from incarceration.
And again, if all of that was either from getting people off of charges that they were innocent of, or working the system and the discretion of the judges, etc., to get lesser sentences, okay, congratulations. Honestly, I'm not being facetious. Great.
That is parents in children's lives. Young people going to college instead of prison.
Again, this keeps being framed as though there's no participation by the person who committed the crime. And again, I don't know how many of these instances where someone was completely acquitted of the crime versus someone just had their sentence reduced or transferred over to something that didn't involve incarceration. But it's not as simple as everyone is a victim. A lot of people make decisions that put them under threat of prosecution and arrest and jail. The fact that this guy has not addressed the actions of the people involved in being charged is really telling.
We're ending generational cycles of suffering.
You know what would end generational cycles of suffering even quicker? If people did not commit crimes.
And when you consider in my home state of California,
Yeah.
it costs $60,000 to house someone in the California prison system.
Oh, so now we're going to go for a profit motive on this one? You're going to appeal to the bottom line on what you've done? Well, I mean, there's an argument for that.
That means that these families are saving their states a ton of money.
Right. You'll forgive me if that sounds a little bit mercenary in comparison to the rosy, moral, virtuous crusade you were describing earlier. It may be true. Just sounds a little, I don't know, cold.
I'm not a mathematician. I haven't done the numbers.
You're not a mathematician. You haven't done the numbers. Is what follows next just a guess then?
But that is money and resources that could be reallocated
to
mental health services, to drug treatment programs, to education.
You're not wrong. Okay.
And we're now wearing this shirt in courts all across the country. And people are wearing this shirt because they want the immediacy of protecting their people in the courtroom.
Not everyone is a victim of the system inherently. Sometimes people break the law, and they have to be held to account for that. Judges have discretion oftentimes as to what they're going to sentence someone to, depending on the severity of the crime, certainly. Families and friends and exculpatory evidence elsewise can mitigate either the charges or the sentencing. Our system is set up to allow for that. But are you just going to go this entire talk, you've only got less than 20 seconds left, without acknowledging that sometimes the responsibility is on the offender?
But what we're telling them is, as practitioners, they're building a new field, a new movement that is going to forever change the way justice is understood in this country. Thank you.
Okay. Before I go into my final assessment here, let's go over the bingo card again. Plays victim. I mean, if not for himself, then for his abstract subject matter. I'm going to put that one on there. Feminism, no. School to prison pipeline, no. Childhood family anecdote, no. And I'm not going to count the cases he brought up. He wasn't talking about himself, and I want to keep that into like a self-effacing sort of thing for a TEDx speaker. Microaggression, no. Takes credit for something done by others in their demographic, no. Equity, no. Rape culture, no. Toxic, no. Anecdote that probably never happened. I mean, that very first story where he left out so much of, I say, it's very hard for me to believe that the defense attorney in that case did absolutely nothing that might have either gathered witness testimony or exculpatory evidence or anything, that it was all on the family, all on the friends. Nothing about the process did anything to help that guy. If somebody has a news story link or something that shows that to be the case, that it was a complete railroaded injustice, okay. But I'm circling anecdote that probably never happened for the way that he told that story. Speaker should not be in current occupation or position. As a community organizer, I don't see anything wrong with where he's at. Marginalization, no. White supremacy privilege, no. Make something about race, etc. for no reason. He brought up racial bias in the system and never went any further with that, so I'm circling that one. Wage gap, no. Patriarchy, no. Benevolent condescension, no. Word salad, I never felt like anything he was saying was complete gobbledygook. Even his buzz phrase, I understood what he was saying, even if it's a new buzz phrase. A list, no. Cultural appropriation, no. Gratuitous pausing for effect, no. So, guys, I have it as not a bingo. I will display it here presently. If you have comments, observations, if you have arguments for other squares that I should have circled, by all means, put them in the chat now while I get the bingo card ready for display. Again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I don't find anything particularly controversial about what he's proposing or the process he is crowing about. It sounds fine to me. Like I say, working within the system is going to change things, but you're not changing the system. You're working the system. So is that to say that, having a mass influx of public participation into the legal system doesn't then change the system if that kind of participation was not there before? Okay, there's an argument there, I suppose. But again, that's working within the system. That's taking advantage of, for lack of a better phrase, what the system provides people to do when it comes to criminal justice. So I didn't hear anything that sounded all that amazing to me. Again, all that innovative. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I'll take your observations in a second. Anyway, here's my bingo card, guys, for your observation. Now moving on to the chat. Let's see. Some emulation. Could the savings be used to go towards a stronger prosecution? When it comes to public defenders versus state prosecutors, public defenders have it pretty slim. So if there's savings to be had, in all honesty, I would say it should be shunted towards the public defender's office, because you need to have that balance, and you need to have that resource available to people who can't afford a lawyer. That'd be my first reflex. Let's see. John Miller, sometimes I wish Judge Dredd was real so that these types could really experience what nasty judges like for extreme judgment. Like I say, I don't have a problem with working the system and taking advantage of a judge's discretion. The decision on the judge's part will be judged itself, either on appeal or otherwise. But that's the system we've got, and there should be a mechanism for people to offer mitigating circumstances or arguments against a severity of a punishment. We see it all the time. It's nothing new. Having it organized or more, I guess, regimented doesn't bother me inherently. And truth be told, I was surprised. He didn't offer anything that sounded like restorative justice in that entire conversation, which, again, I was surprised by. Mr. Scott J. said, I think I found it. Ramon Vasquez, a 31-year-old delivery truck driver and father of two, who was wrongfully charged for murder in Santa Clara County in 2009. Okay, I don't disbelieve the case exists. My question is, was his exoneration entirely attributed to the family and friends' efforts? Was there nothing involved from either the police, the prosecutor, and most especially the defense team and or attorney or whoever? Was it entirely the fault of, I don't mean in a negative light, but is it entirely the result of the family and friends' efforts? If so, I'm willing to take back the anecdote that never happened. That's the one question I had the whole time. Nothing for you here. I just think the speaker is a useful puppet of communistic reform of the American justice system, but I guess that's just me. Like I say, maybe there are some sentiments in there with the community organizing and such, but insofar as what they were doing to work the system, they're working the system as it sits. He didn't offer up any sort of revisions of law or legislation or tearing down of anything. He was talking about citizens and concerned individuals working the system to lead to a better outcome for the person they cared about. And I don't have an inherent problem with that. Let's see. Some emulation says I was joking. Well, I figured, but when it comes to internet and text, there's rarely ever any inflection. So just to be sure. Let's see. Faithless. Prosecutors are the varsity team lawyers and the public defenders are the girls' peewee league. I mean, given the funding and resources provided in most cases, yeah. Even though both are funded by the state, the public defenders are often very overwhelmed. And actually, the overwhelming of the process, either on prosecutors or public defenders' part, is why you see so many plea bargains to try to get the cases off of their plate because they are so overwhelmed. They've got such a backlog. It's one of the sort of inherent failings of our system is that it can be so overburdened that real justice sometimes gets set aside for the expediency of just moving on to the next case. Sometimes people get plea deals that any logical, rational person observing it would say, that person doesn't deserve a plea deal. I can't count how many cases I've seen where that's happened. So it's a double-edged sword, really, as the Lady Justice holds, by the way. Faithless prosecutor. Oh, sorry, I just read that. Death Glock, that's true. I didn't get the idea of restorative justice in his words. Justice reform, perhaps, which may or may not actually be a thing. Justice reform is entirely possible. Like I say, our system is not perfect. Jurisdiction to jurisdiction, even in the federal level, there's certainly places where things can be revised to meet with current times, or loopholes or flaws that can be fixed. The phrase "in order to form a more perfect union," that as well applies to our criminal justice system or our system of justice. It'll never be perfect, but we can work to make it more perfect than it was yesterday. And so in that sense, I don't have a problem with anything he's suggesting. Let's see. Some emulation. Would the speaker support a community for the victim of crimes being brought in to assist the prosecution? Well, I mean, the victim of crimes usually is brought in by the prosecution if they're able to testify, because they have to testify and, help be the accuser towards the accused. So maybe I'm missing something there. Let's see. And John Miller says, at least we don't still use Hammurabi's code. That's a little antiquated. It may be the foundation for a lot of how we operate today, but if we just operated on that, we'd probably not be all that happy as a society. So there you go. But guys, I've already gone over time just a little bit, not too much. And I think I've said everything that comes to mind. I'm still searching for something that sounds new. And like I say, this one is one of the few TEDx talks where fundamentally I didn't hear anything completely crazy. I didn't hear anything completely unreasonable. Sounds fine to me. I may question how he categorized the process or participation or results of what he's doing or what his organization has done. But I can't argue with the sentiment behind it or the intention of it. So in that sense, this is a rare TEDx talk. I didn't freak out at any point going like, what the hell are you talking about? No, I understood. But I'm still looking for somebody to tell me something substantive, Irate Bear, that would drastically change how we either police our communities or prosecute our cases. That is an improvement, a articulable, clear improvement over what we're currently doing. And I'll keep looking. I won't do a criminal justice TEDx every time, but I'll keep looking because I am curious and I am wanting to hear new ideas. But anyway, guys, all that being said, thank you so much for your participation, your attendance, and your generosity today. Appreciate it so much. If you would like to hear more from me or Ranting Monkey, or Satsu 2 Cents. You can find all three of us tonight on Ranting Monkey's channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for Lords of the Night. We'll talk about the news. We'll talk about the news stories you send us. We'll talk about what we're up to on the intertubes and elsewise, and then we'll take your questions. Everyone, I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one, because rest assured, there's plenty more where this came from. Everyone have a good day. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.